Hello and welcome back once more to the Single Malt Review, where we have diverged, as we are wont to do, from the malt category, and we've strayed south into bourbon territory once more. What have you brought along?
Well, straight out of Kentucky, we got Jim Beam 12-year-old. That's the Jim Beam Signature Craft 12-year-old. Now, we've done a few Jim Beam whiskies before, but never one with the Jim Beam
Nothing
label.
we've done, we've done Booker Nose, we've done Baker's, we've done Knob Creek, and I might have even missed one out of there, but yes, we have done a lot of Jim Beam whiskey, just not with Jim Beam, so first and foremost on the label, so I guess this is the most normal. Goodness, I was expecting that to be a cork, and all the hallmarks of something about to be a cork, but never mind. Not that there's anything wrong with screw caps, they're just as good, and they don't break off in the neck either. So yeah, this is Jim Beam's 12-year-old thing, and though this has been around for a wee while, I think this is now sort of their answer to the Elijah Craig 12-year-old, which used to be the 12-year-old bourbon, which we have reviewed, I think, at least a year ago now, but they have sadly discontinued that one, or rather it's turned into a no-age statement, so no more is Elijah Craig 12-year-old. So maybe this is filling a bit of a gap in the market that they saw there. So otherwise, I think it's a fairly straight Jim Beam whiskey. Obviously, just a wee bit older, and as they say, small batch, which I suppose it would be because they don't make as much of this as they do the standard Jim Beam. But any other differences, we'll just have to dig in and see if we can find them.
Yeah, this is the international bottling, so a 700ml bottle at 43% ABV, 86 American proof. Smells like Jim Beam.
Promising, actually.
Rich. A lot of corn, a lot of molasses on the nose.
Very, very sweet and very, very corny nose.
It is crystal clear.
On that one.
It's a very rich orangey amber colour.
It's pretty dark, as you would expect a 12-year-old bourbon to be. I mean, bourbon gets very, very dark very, very quickly, but it still does gain colour as it gets even older. This is tantamount to twice as old as your mainstream bourbon would normally be allowed to age. Bourbon is something that normally gets bottled at the sort of 6-7 year mark, going up to maybe 8, 9, 12. 12 is quite
you do normally pay a lot more for bourbon once it hits the 10 to 12 years and so forth. This one, though, is I found, comparatively very economical for a 12-year-old. It's on par with some 10 to 12-year-old Scotch.
So you'd expect to have really, really extreme sweet oak flavours with vanilla, cinnamon, all that sort of spiciness that comes from the American white oak maturation. And I think this is, at least on the nose, kind of providing that.
The nose is delivering a lot. I was worried. I've not tried this before, but I was worried going in because of the comparatively low bottling streak for 43. We've had some impressively strong, well-matured single cask or small batch bourbons before. This is a much lower streak compared to those, but it's stronger than your average off-the-shelf no-age statement Jim Beam.
I think it's got enough strength there. There's certainly quite a punch to the nose when you really get the schnozzle in there, I mean, this is a freshly opened bottle as well, so we might be getting some of the more short-lived volatiles that sort of lurk in freshly opened bottles that won't be there, say, a week from now. So we might be tasting something just a wee bit more exciting.
It's really clean to the glass. It won't show up on camera, but there's a lot of oily streaking there, so there's definitely some body to this.
So, really, aside from that, it's sort of a typical bourbon nose profile, but maybe just with a wee bit more, times 1.5 or something. There's huge, huge lashings of maple syrup, all these sweet components you get from a charred barrel. So, what's on the palate?
That is so smooth and sweet, I can barely taste the alcohol. There is, however, a very strong wood smoke component. There are lots of lovely charred wood.
That's hugely charry, actually. You can really, really taste the char. I don't know if they went with super charred barrels for these or not, whether they went with some...
It may just be a factor of a component of the age. Like, I remember the
I'm not sure,
older age statement Elijah Craig being very smoky, very woody, very charred. This has got that character in spades.
That's surprisingly long as well. That's quite pleasant. It's fairly punchy up front. I think I got more of an alcohol prickle than you did straight away, but that actually subsides into really quite a fairly elegant and lovely finish, really, where it's sort of slowly smoothing into a lovely savoury popcorn sweetness. And it's really pretty good. I'll have one more look.
You got to hold it in your mouth for a long time, and the heat and alcohol prickle develops over that time, up to a kind of like almost a jalapeno chili pepper heat right at the end. But you got to really hold it there for a time, and it's despite that heat, it's cloying and mellow, and for the most part, it's
very satisfying.
Sweet and accessible. Yeah,
very satisfying.
It's definitely not lacking on account of being that relatively low 43% bottling strength.
This is a lot more. This reminds me hugely more of Baker Beams, which is one of my sort of go-to bourbons. Really, it's there in the sort of craft range or whatever they call it. And it sort of sits beside Booker Nose, but it's quite a fuller, sweeter bourbon, where Booker's is quite savoury, quite dry, in addition to being usually quite a bit stronger, and so significantly more fire, and has a lot of sort of pepper qualities to it. This is really very sweet. It's quite a desserty bourbon almost. This is, was I to make a Scotch whiskey comparison, this is almost like a Glendronach of bourbons, you could say. It's really sort of deep and fulsome, and carries a lot of these dark, rich flavours with it. Not to say that it tastes like it's been sherry matured, which it doesn't, but in terms of holding it against other bourbons, there's huge sort of sweetness and richness here.
Yeah, but alongside that nice sooty wood smoke too. It's a good balance of those two characters, and it's got a bit of a punch to it, but it sneaks up on you. It's some of these stronger, higher strength bourbons. They're initially very smooth, but you can taste the intensity as well. This one, that sheer punchiness just creeps up at the end.
I'll add just a drop here.
I'll try it too. I know it's not normally the done thing for bourbon, but just to see what happens.
Can't say it's done the nose any favours.
Yeah, no discernible change.
If anything, that's just a wee bit less intense with the water there, which is a wee bit odd. And you know, if anything, that's dried it out a wee bit more. That's usually that will sweeten something up, but I suppose when we're drinking higher strength, older bourbons, they're normally a bit more sort of dry and austere. So this one being so sweet to begin with, I don't know.
Adding a little water has kind of staved off that stealthy, slow alcohol burn. It's meant that I can taste some more, say, dried apricot, dried papaya. If you're familiar with those fruits in their dried state, there's elements of that coming through.
No, I think I preferred it at its full 43% strength. Which, I mean, that said, that's as low as I would normally water a foolproof bourbon to.
It's meant to be. I mean,
anyway, yeah.
Adding water to bourbon is not normally the done thing. So
no, I think better at full strength.
Yeah.
But really quite a pleasing whiskey. On the sweeter end of the spectrum, which isn't sort of my wheelhouse for bourbon. I like my bourbons to be quite dry and savoury, because I think the just the nature of corn distillate is so sort of sweet on its own that when you combine that with so much sweet vanilla oak, it can often become too much. I think if this was 40%, then it would be kind of in trouble because of that.
It'd be veering towards the insipid end of the spectrum.
Well, it would just, I think, be too sweet at that point. So I think that 43% is necessary for this one, and I think it does a lot of favours. So it's a bourbon for me that's teetering on the edge of being too sweet, but it gets away with it because of that tremendous finish that it has. This bourbon really is one that shows its character in the finish, and I suppose that's just the extra years of aging that brings that on.
Well, I like bourbon that is explosively sweet, cloyingly sticky and syrupy. This one delivers that, but it's also backed up by that rich, woody smokiness. It's course, there's charred oak in all your bourbon, but it's the extra maturation, the 12 years, which has made it really come to the fore here, and it serves it very well.
Does a score come to mind?
I would rate this one in 88. It is a very tasty, but also very accessible mature bourbon. You'd be hard pressed to find better value for money in terms of your 12-year-old bourbon. You could pay a lot more for a marginally better whiskey, I'm sure. But this one balances the age, the sweetness, the smoothness, the maturation, and a balanced bottling strength too.
Well, I'll have to go a wee bit lower, but just more for the fault that it's not in my sort of bourbon wheelhouse rather than anything else. I certainly see that it's really capping off on what it's doing, but it's an 85 for me. Perfectly enjoyable, and certainly compare this to your Jim Beam no years old Jim Beam white label, then that spins away and blinks out of existence in space somewhere, anime style. It is a tantamountly superior whiskey to that, do not get me wrong, even if it's not my style of things. But no, an easy 85 for me, which is not bad as far as bourbon goes. But at any rate, this has been the Single Malt Review, deviating as we do into bourbon country. I hope that was useful. At least it didn't have a name like Blanton's that we could mispronounce in this time. So there you go, got away with that one. Thank you for watching. Slandra, we will be right back with something a wee bit different.